Good morning, guys. We're going to have two lessons today, so two short, snappy lessons. Just as a bit of admin, you know the test is going to be on Friday. It's going to be on all graphs, functions, including trig graphs. And it really means that you're going to have to do more work out of the class. Okay, because I need to go pretty fast. It's already tight. All subjects in maths need practice. Function is one of them. And so it is important that you do all the homework that I said for you. Okay? So, and if there is something that you don't know, let me know. That's also for you guys. If there's something I gave you homework yesterday, please stop me after this video and I'll go over it. But I'm not just going to go over the homework if you don't tell me over a specific question. So the first lesson is domain and range. Okay, I can't remember if we mentioned that. I think we did. But a function is a machine, right? Remember, E-O-O. Okay? It takes a number, okay, from a set of numbers, and for each one of these numbers, it assigns one other number. Yeah, okay? So the numbers, the input numbers, what we can call the inputs, the X, is called the main. And the output numbers, okay, which are what we call the Y's, are the range. And it is highly confusing. I always get confused until eventually I realize, okay, think about it like a range. Okay, a range where you're shooting range, arrows. The range is where you're hitting the arrows with. So that is the range, that's the Y, the output, and you are where you're shooting from is the domain. Okay, that's how I remember it. So by looking at certain graphs, we need to figure out which one is the domain, decide the domain and the range. I'll do 3 with you, and I'll get you to do some on your own. Let's start with this one, actually. Okay, this is all in exercise 7. Okay? What does this arrow mean? It carries on. It doesn't stop. Okay? Here it stops in those points. Here it carries on. So we need to figure out what is the domain, okay? The values of x that are allowed here, and the range. Okay? What values of x are allowed here? Are there any x values that are not allowed? No. Georgia says no. So the way to do it is kind of you scan through the x-axis, okay, and you go from minus infinity, and you go around and you see, can you substitute, can you have an x value for that? Yes, I can. All the way to infinity, plus infinity. Any kind of x that you decide, plus 5, minus 1,000, you will have an x value. So it's basically from minus infinity to plus infinity. Okay? Or we can write it down as, I'm going to change my notation sometime. Okay? So that's for the domain. What about the range? Are there any y values that are not allowed? Everything is allowed. Now you go through the y-axis. So you go from minus infinity. Is there going to be a y value for minus 1,000? There will be. It will be here somewhere. Minus 10. Here. Here's 0. 10 will be there. Plus 1,000,000 will be there. Okay? So the y are larger than minus infinity and smaller than infinity. Okay? Anyone seen the movie 8? See 8? South African film. Very good. Horror film. Fantastic. Okay. Anyway, you can either write it like this or like that. Okay?
You have to like square brackets.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to have a look at this now. Okay, so this was, in other words, the domain and the range include all the numbers that we know. What about here? Let's have a look at the x. Okay, so we're going to write domain and range. Okay? So, normally when we write this, to write mathematically, by the way, we'll say x belong to. Should I write x belong to? This is belong. So let's use the same kind of notation. X belong to. What are the values of x that are allowed here? Is there a minimum value of x? Okay? You can see this doesn't go into infinity. It ends at which value of x? Minus 3. You can go here and you go, okay, I've got nothing before minus 3. So it's going to be between minus 3 and what's the maximum? What's the maximum value of x? So you scan it, like you scan it horizontally. stops here. I can't go anymore. So what's the maximum x allowed? 1. Okay. Ollie's asking our brackets. What kind of brackets are we going to have? On the left, what will we have? Is it a square? That white circle tells you it doesn't actually include that point. It's just up to it. So it's going to be a round on this side. But this dark circle means it does include that point. So here it will be square. And we're going to pause here for a second. And we also could have write it in this way. We can say, right, x is larger than -3 and smaller or equal to 1. Beyond that x, they're not allowed.
That's too confusing.
Okay, I'll just pause again. What's confusing?
No, it's easier to write the brackets.
Yeah.
It looks easier.
Alright, Ollie says brackets better. It's fine. But you need to be able to read it at least like that. Okay? I'll rub it for you. Don't want to confuse you. Okay. Range. Okay, range is the y values. So now we go, I'll give it another color. Green. We go on the y value, y axis, and we see what y are allowed. So obviously from here to here. So what's the maximum? Okay, let's write it this way. Y belong to. What's the maximum and the minimum?
2.
So the maximum is 2, the minimum is? -4. Now you need to don't get confused. We're not reading the x values, we're looking at the y values. So the minimum is -4 and the maximum is 2. Can you see that? -4, do we have round or square bracket? Square, because it includes, that point is included. And they are on the 2 circle, because it's not including that point. And you see that it's actually the other way around here, because this time we were looking at the y value, here we were looking at the x. Okay, 7 minutes, guys. Let's finish it under 10 minutes. Over here, a little bit different. Okay, alright, I'll just pause here, discuss this with you. Doesn't want to pause today. Okay, right. So the domain, we're asking ourselves what values of x are allowed. So we're going through the x-axis, we scan. Is that x value allowed? Yeah, if I go from here, I'll meet some the point there. If I go here, will it meet there? If I go to a million plus million, will I meet the graph somewhere? Yes, I will. Okay, that line says it carries on. That arrow says it carries on. So the range really is between -infinity and +infinity. Okay, we need to use both notation. Okay, both. Range. What is the range? What are the values of y that are allowed? Okay, so here now we need to look at the y-axis. Okay, let's go over above 0. Okay, for any value of y, will I be able to meet the graph somewhere? Yes, at 1 I will meet here, at 2 I will meet there, and there. There's actually 2 values of y. Okay, if I go to a million, will I meet the graph somewhere? I will. Okay, if I go from -3 downward, for any y value, will I meet the graph? Yes. So anything above 0 or below -3, I will meet the graph. Will I meet the graph if I'm, let's say, at -1 over here? Will I meet the graph? No, I won't. Okay? So between 0 and -3, I don't have any y values. Now the question I think you're asking yourself, how you write it down. Okay? So what we got to say is, when we write here the range, we can't write what y values are not allowed. We need to say what y values are allowed. Okay? So we said that y can be larger than 0. It can be anything larger than 0. Or y, I don't know if you can see it here. Or y can be smaller than -3. You need to write that or. You need to write that or. It's either larger than 0 or smaller than -3.
So it can also equal 0 or equal 1.
Fantastic. So that's the first thing I was going to say. Okay, Ollie says, hang on, sir, it can actually be equal to 0 and it can be equal to -3. So I need to add the equal sign. Absolutely. Okay, now let me ask you another question. Can I write it, instead, this seems to be a bit clanky to me, y larger or equal to 0 or smaller than -3. Can't I write it like this? Y smaller or equal to -3 and larger or equal to 0. Can't I write it like this? That's all in one line like we've done here. Is that allowed? Let's just let them think about that. Yeah. Right, the answer is you can't. You can't write it like that. This is mathematical nonsense. Okay? Look at this. Here I'm saying, right, y must be larger or equal to 0. That means it's a positive value, positive number, or 0. Okay? But at the same time, y needs to be smaller than minus 3. Can that be? Can you have a number which is smaller than minus 3 and is also positive or 0 at the same? Of course you can't say that. So we can't write it like this. Okay? This is mathematical nonsense. We've got to write it like this. It's either larger than 0 or equal to, or smaller or equal to minus 3. Two separate. Right, cool. Let's do some work now. See you in the next lesson.